After being killed in battle, I crossed the street again. Without luck, it's a more deadly place. The attacking giant Ren, whose self-taught, pulled out a relatively sharp blade. Attack on the Giants, end. Original Steampunk World, end. Fatezero, end. Original, The Lord Sigh, end. Fifth Holy Grail War, end. Sixth Distinct Point, Holy Round Table Domain Camelo, end. Pirate King, end. Original, Burning Eternal Night, in progress. Keywords of the novel. Unlimited pop-up starting from Giants. Download the complete collection of Unlimited TXT starting from Giants, and read the latest chapter of Unlimited starting from Giants. Chapter 1. Ryan Ackermann. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Ryan Ackermann. Ren woke up. He was carried back by a hunter with a bandage wrapped around his head at that time. Ren Ackermann, 12 years old this year, was born on December 25, 835. He was placed on earth, Christmas, and celebrated his birthday on the same day as the Son of God Jesus. He was placed in this world. Sorry, nothing. It is now the summer of 847, and it is said that the 104th Training Corps in the south is going to recruit people. Ren is preparing to join the army, but he has to go. Because if he doesn't join the army again, he may starve to death and become one of the many street raiders. Ren is now a traveler. He used to have 2 names, but now he is called Ren. The real Ryan died a month ago when he was being chased by a bear while hunting, and he should have died in the mouth of the bear. But at the critical moment of life and death, a powerful force suddenly surged out of Ren Ackermann's body, greatly increasing his control over his body. And then he killed that bear. Of course not, he's not Mao Zi. A miner is not a match for Black Bear at all. Adding to the fact that his bow and arrow had accidentally fallen to the ground before, he could only run wildly and finally managed to shake off the black bear with its mouth wide open. But heaven doesn't favor this young man too much. Just as he was about to stop running at the bear's mouth, he accidentally tripped over the vines on the ground and, already exhausted, rolled all the way down the slope. He was careless and didn't dodge. He bumped into a big stone and hung it. Then the traveler Ren opened his eyes, wiped the blood off his face, and found himself carried on his back by a hunter uncle, taking him back to a small village on the outskirts of the forest. Ren, have you recovered from your injury? I heard you're also going to train the corps, said the middle-aged uncle who carried Ren back in a yard. No problem, Uncle Bros. It's been a month now and I'm planning to join the army. I'll be leaving in the next few days. Hunter dressed in a hat, Uncle Browse smiled. Ren, you are a strong man, but half a month ago you actually went to seek revenge on that bear. This action is too impulsive and does not conform to the prudence that hunters should have. I don't know how you killed it, but it's very dangerous. It's not easy for you to live alone. If you have any difficulties, please tell us. After all, I have known your father for 10 years and he has unfortunately passed away. I should also take care of you. Ren nodded and smiled. Thank you for your concern, uncle. I am already 12 years old and can take care of myself. This time, I will definitely become a powerful soldier, driving out all those giants, so that everyone can hunt in the forest again. As a traveler now, he still has some tricks. After all, although he doesn't seem to have a system, this is also his second time traveling. When he was 14 years old, one day he woke up and traveled to a young man on a different continent. That was not any novel or anime world he knew of. Just when he was at a loss, he was immediately tested for a knight's qualification that could be selected from 1,000 miles, and could join the Imperial Border Knights to cultivate divine fighting spirit. At the usual pace, this is going against the sky. It excites him so much that he can't even sleep at night. Then, reality slapped him. What kind of sacred fighting spirit is not mystical at all? Not to mention flying to the sky, escaping from the earth, and breaking through mountains and seas, even the sword energy in blade cannot be cut off, intangible and without any shining special effects. In addition to enhancing physical fitness several times, it can only be attached to the surface of fists, swords, or arrows to increase attack power. And what are their opponents? A group of copper skin and iron bones, powerful and ferocious orcs. He still has some talent. After training for a year and a half and practicing for over half a year, he has become an elite knight who can kill orcs alone. Then there was no more. The Thorn Knights, one of the 20 knights on his border, was once heavily besieged and almost completely annihilated. There is nothing to turn the tide of things around, but to turn the tide, output cannot rely on roaring, and there is no way to deal with the huge disparity in military strength. Before his death, he pulled 7 orcs on their backs and ultimately died in battle. There was no miracle, the only miracle was that he had crossed again. It also carries a sacred fighting spirit that is not very explosive. Half a month ago, he shot the bear to death with an invisible fighting spirit attached to his bow and arrow, which can be considered as revenge for the original Ren. Uncle Bruce sighed and heard that Ren was going to drive out the giant, feeling somewhat worried and relieved. 10 years ago, Ren's father brought 2-year-old Ren to this village by the forest and became a hunter, often hunting with him. 2 years ago, in 845 AD, the Wall of Maria was breached by giants, and a large number of refugees flooded into the territory of the Wall of Roses. Forests were cultivated, and the number of prey sharply decreased. Ren's father went deep into the forest to hunt and never returned, leaving him, who was then 10 years old, to survive alone. 2 years have passed now, and Ren is 12 years old, reaching the age to join the military. Coincidentally, he also plans to have his daughter join the military, so let's send her along and take care of each other. Sasha, come out and say hello to Ryan. He will join the army with you. Uncle Bras glanced at his daughter, Sasha Bras, who was hiding behind a tree in the yard. She has a head of reddish-brown hair, a shoulder-length single ponytail, a slender figure, 3-dimensional features, and often wears a medieval long dress. She is a standard beauty. Sasha was hiding behind a tree quietly glancing at Ren, and with a hint of shyness, she stood up and said, hello, I'm Sasha Bruce. Please give me more guidance. Ren couldn't help but stroke his forehead and said, Sasha, we've seen each other several times. You don't need to be so polite. This. I'm sorry. Sasha felt a bit awkward, incoherent and unsure of what to say. Uncle Bras felt a headache at the sight and couldn't hesitate. He had to send his daughter to the military this time. He wanted to do it last year, but he was a bit reluctant, but now it really can't be done. My daughter has been staying in the forest for too long, making it difficult to communicate with people normally. Moreover, there have been too few prey recently, and I really can't afford to raise my own foodie daughter. Uncle Bruce coughed lightly and his expression became serious. Sasha, pack your luggage today and join the army with Ren tomorrow. The old village chief is going out to buy some supplies, so you can take his carriage with you. We can take you all the way. Sasha puffed up her face and became less polite to her father, saying, humph. Just go and go, I happen to be able to eat enough when I join the army. A few days ago, she had an argument with her father about whether to abandon the hunting tradition, accept government supplies, and raise horses. Therefore, even without Ren, she would eventually be sent to serve in the military. Looking at his daughter's angry expression, Uncle Bruce looked helpless and turned to Ren, saying, Ren, you are usually quite clever. After you go to the training corps, please take care of my foolish daughter. Please rest assured, Uncle Bras. I will take care of her and I believe everyone will like her, Ren replied with a smile. Who are you talking about? Take out that piece of barbecue and apologize to me quickly. Sasha grabbed her father's hand with a look of anger, and Uncle Bras struggled weakly. His daughter is really good at eating. If you don't send her away, there won't be any leftover food at home. When Ren returned home, it was just a simple wooden house. There is hardly any furniture inside, as if in poverty, with clean sleeves, not enough to eat, and walls leaking. This describes the situation. He doesn't have much to tidy up either. A relatively good set of changing clothes, some dry food, a water bag, and a little money. It was only after slaughtering the black bear half a month ago that he gained some money. Thanks to that bear, he has been eating well for the past half-month and bought a decent set of clothes. He didn't just want to seek revenge for his original self before doing it. Compared to poverty, black bears are much more beloved, at least they can eat meat, really bear paws, and the taste is just right. Black bear. At night, Ren began practicing the night breath technique, and the world changed. The effect of the night breath technique was only half there. However, when he traveled, he carried the sacred fighting spirit he had gained from 2 years of cultivation in that unknown exotic continent. Therefore, the fighting spirit in his body is still passable now, although this fighting spirit is really not very powerful, not even comparable to the fighting spirit transforming into a horse. But if it were attached to the blade, it would at least make it easier to chop down the giant. It would be better than not having it at all. He could only comfort himself in this way. 2 hours later, the cultivation was completed. Originally, 1 hour a day was enough, but the efficiency of this world is only half. The breathing technique cannot be practiced for more than 3 hours a day, otherwise it will lose some lifespan. Although Ren suspects that he will still have a few days to live after joining the investigation corps 3 years later. Those giant creatures with no harm other than their necks and huge bodies are much more difficult to deal with than orcs. Judging from his current perspective, giants are terrifying. Without the use of 3-dimensional maneuvering devices, he can only take down a few giants that are 3.4 meters tall with a knife. For those giants that are 7, 8, or even more than 10 meters tall, he can only escape and may not be able to escape. Holy Dookie is not particularly powerful except for its name, but in reality, it cannot unleash sword energy and blade shards for long-range attacks. Even if it is attached to the arrow, it will scatter if it exceeds 20 meters, and the bow and arrow are not of much use to the giant, so we still need to rely on black technology. 3-dimensional maneuvering devices. Sure enough, science is the most powerful. The first productive force is well deserved, and everything else is just some crooked ways. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Is so cute, it must be a boy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 is so cute, it must be a boy. The next day, Ren was on his way. Ahem. Ren has set off. Accompanying him was Sasha, and the two of them sat in a rudimentary carriage. The carriage was driven by an old man wearing a blue and gray coat, who was kind and easy to talk to. The village where Ren and Sasha are located is called Dow Jones Par Village, located in the southern district of the Wall of Roses. It is a hunting village with very few people in the deep mountains far from the town. As the village chief, today the old man went to the town to help the villagers buy some essential necessities such as oil and salt. He also picked up Ren and Sasha on the way. The training corps was stationed in the southern area of the Wall of Roses, and when we arrived at the town, we walked for another 2 hours. On the convertible carriage, Ren looked at Sasha Bruce. This girl is not really stunning, but she's also pretty, but she's really good at eating. Perhaps it's been a long time since I last saw my daughter. Uncle Bros handed Sasha a package of food, which included bread, cooked sweet potatoes, dried meat, and more. Then, for an hour on the carriage, Sasha didn't speak to Ren either, just eat, eat, and eat. Looking at it, Ren felt a bit hungry. At this moment, he was reminiscing about the plot of the giant attacking. When he was still a third-year student on Earth, he also watched about 20 episodes of the giant drama when it was very popular. Just as he was getting into a pit, the giant was banned and he didn't continue to chase after him. Now he deeply regrets not searching for resources to continue chasing, and he only saw the captain chop down the female giant to rescue Alan, not even knowing who the female giant was. And he has gone through many things, and it has been a bit long. He is not a true fan, and many details have been completely forgotten. Ren is actually 16 years old now, and his physical appearance is currently 12 years old. He was 13 years old when he saw the giant, 14 years old when he first traveled, and spent 2 years on a different continent, which was almost 4 years ago. Now he remembered who the head of the investigative corps was. I know the protagonist's name is Alan Yeager, and the female lead is Mikasa Ackermann. Okay, this is all nonsense, it's useless. He covered his face and sighed, careless. Who knew he would come to this extremely dangerous world? Sasha looked at Ren, who was covered in his head and looked pale, and finally stopped eating sweet potatoes. She asked with uncertainty. So, Ryan, is your head really hurting? You just hit your head a month ago and need to rest well. Sasha hesitated for a moment, divided the sweet potato in half, and handed him half. Eat more, this way you won't have a headache, she said. What? Ryan took a small portion of sweet potatoes with a bewildered expression on his face. Is there any inevitable connection between eating and treating headaches? He tried to take a bite and, oh, the taste was quite good. It was so fragrant. Sasha looked at Ren, who had eaten sweet potatoes, with a silly smile on her face. She gained some confidence and felt that getting along with others was not that difficult, so she had a friend. Okay, even though she already knew him. Ren didn't know that he had become Sasha's first friend in her eyes. He was just reminiscing about Sasha and forgiving him for only now remembering that Sasha was also a plot character with some scenes. As far as he knew and could imagine, it seemed that nothing had happened to her. Don't worry, in this very dangerous world, if your destiny is not strong enough, no matter how beautiful the girl is, she won't be useful. If she doesn't live for a few episodes, she will have to receive a boxed meal. Looking at Sasha constantly delivering things to her mouth, Ren couldn't help but ask, Sasha, are you very hungry? Sasha felt a bit embarrassed. Sorry, I haven't had enough to eat for a long time. 2 years ago, after the fall of the Wall of Maria, refugees flooded in and I often went hungry. The forest inside the Wall of Roses has been cultivated a lot, and you are also a hunter. You must know that the prey is getting fewer and fewer. With a clear nod, Ren said. Of course, if it weren't for the lack of prey, I wouldn't have gone deep into the forest as I almost got killed by that bear. Isn't it? The prey is becoming increasingly difficult to catch, otherwise the original Ren wouldn't have died. His father was only killed by a fierce tiger 2 years ago when he went deep into the forest. Of course, the tiger was also killed by Uncle Browse and a few companions in the end. Otherwise, the current Ren would also seek revenge, wearing it on others, and seeking revenge for them is also appropriate. Of course, the taste of tiger meat should be good, and he also acknowledges this. Sasha's eyes lit up and she looked at Ren with some admiration. I heard you killed that bear half a month ago, it's really impressive. Ren smiled, realizing that the sacred fighting spirit attached to the arrow still had some power. It was not in vain that he had been lurking in a tree for a whole morning, and finally 3 arrows killed the passing bear. Dow Jones Parish is very remote. The carriage took over 2 hours to reach the nearest town. Along the way, apart from chatting with Ren a few times, Sasha resumed her foodie mode. Uncle Bruce gave her enough food in the package to eat 3 meals alone, so she ate almost everything in 1 meal. It's scary, no wonder the uncle wants to send her to become a soldier. The training corps seems to have no salary, but it's all about food and shelter. As the town arrived, the wheels of the carriage stopped spinning. The old village chief smiled and looked at the 2 people curiously looking on the carriage, saying, Young men, when we arrive, we need to train hard to join the army. Don't embarrass our village. Ren immediately responded and looked at Sasha, who was still eating, helplessly saying, Sasha, we're here. It's time to get off the car. Please wait a moment, it will be ready soon. Sasha was a bit anxious, saying as she stuffed a half-eaten taro into her mouth. This guy Ren had a black line all over his head and reached out to grab Sasha's food bag. He jumped out of the car and ran forward. Sasha, if you don't catch up, I'll eat everything inside. Sasha was shocked and pale. She held half a taro in her left hand and picked up the bag containing clothes in her right hand, jumping off the carriage with agility. She immediately chased after her and shouted, "Ryan, wait, don't eat all of it, I'm coming." Seeing the two people running farther and faster, the old village chief smiled and shook his head, sighing, "Being young is really good." After chasing for a while, Sasha finally retrieved the food and couldn't help but complain. "Oh, Run, you're going too far. Go sign up early, it'll be over in just these 2 days. If you have something delicious next time, you'll get half of it," Ren shrugged. The relationship was good, and Sasha's eyes immediately lit up. "Thank you, that's what you said. No one is allowed to steal it." What else can he say? This girl is hopeless. After walking for about 2 hours, Ren and Sasha arrived at the training corps base. A small valley located in the southern area of the Wall of Roses. The valley is basin-shaped with 3 earthen walls, and on the other side of the mountain slope are 2 winding granite-wide roads, which are the main roads leading to cities in the external area. In the afternoon, Ren and Sasha arrived at the registration room. The registration time was 5 days, and it was already the 4th day. It was quite late, so there were not many people in the registration office. At first glance was a middle-aged man with a black bald head, dressed in military uniform, sitting behind his desk. After glancing at the two of them, he picked up the 2 watches from the table. "Fill in your own identity information, then take this form to collect 2 sets of training soldiers' uniforms. Someone will arrange accommodation later, remember not to run around. Understand?" Ren and Sasha completed the form and went to the warehouse to collect 2 sets of uniforms before bidding farewell to each other. He walked towards the boys' dormitory, and the accommodation conditions of the training corps were not very good. After all, they were a group of new recruits, with 4, 8, and 12 people, all in the collective dormitory. Ryan was lucky enough to be assigned to a quadruple. He leisurely walked into his room and looked down. The floor was clean and tidy, and had already been cleaned. Obviously, someone had moved in these days. There are 2 upper and lower bunks with a total of 4 beds. When Ren saw that there was still an empty lower bunk, he naturally smiled and threw his luggage on the bed. At that moment, someone pushed the door and walked in. Ren turned his head and his face was taken aback. It was a lovely girl with golden hair, blue eyes, and a pretty appearance. He kindly reminded, "Hey, you're going the wrong way. The girls' dormitory is on the other side." The person who came in was momentarily stunned and said awkwardly, "Well, actually, I'm a man." "What?" Ren looked surprised as he carefully looked at his neck and noticed his Adam's apple. "Okay, so cute, it must be a boy." "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm dizzy. I'm Ren Ackermann, and I also live in this dormitory. Please give me more guidance." Ren reacted and introduced himself. The blonde boy was slightly surprised and replied, "I'm Amin Arnold, please give me more guidance." Ryan's expression is a bit strange. It seems like she's the second female lead. I have some impression. It seems like the name of the second male lead. So, is it highly likely that Iron Man Alan also lives here? Good luck, is this a stroke of luck? Unexpectedly, I sneak in. Is it a supporting role? Can I get a supporting role halo to protect my life? It seems like it's not working. Alan's protagonist aura can't even cover him up, as far as he knows. Anyway, it's enough. This person has been tormented quite badly. I can't rely on it. Without a thigh hug, Ren instinctively shrugged his shoulders. Sure enough, after a while, a boy with brown hair and blue eyes, with a bitter expression and deep hatred, came in carrying a bucket of water. Alan Yeager, a somewhat miserable male protagonist, has childhood sweethearts, good friends, and special powers. But this cannot conceal the fact that he still performs poorly. It's not that he is not awesome, but this is a cruel world, not very romantic. At least Ren felt that this place was much worse than the exotic continent he had traveled through last time, where the orcs were fierce, but the border knights could also resist and even suppress it. It's different here, humans are absolutely at a disadvantage and it's difficult to get by. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. 104 Recruitment Ceremony for New Recruits. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 104 Recruitment Ceremony for New Recruits. In the evening, Ren and Ellen had already said hello, which can be considered as getting to know each other. There was another blonde-haired man named Thomas Wagner living in the back, and all four of them were in the dormitory. Next, the four of them will live here for 3 years. To be honest, Ren has no impression of who Thomas is, but even though he is a roommate, he hopes he can stay strong and live longer. In such a world, this is already a blessing. Damn it, how can I handle this belt? I can't put on my pants. Alan tried on his uniform with a restless expression. It was really troublesome to wear the uniform of the training corps for the first time, especially those belts were really difficult to handle. However, these cannot be removed. When 3-dimensional mobile devices are used in the future, these belts will help to adjust posture and control balance in the air. Ren sorted out the belts on these clothes and slowly put on his uniform, saying, "Alan, don't worry, I've already put them on and shouldn't have put them on wrong. I'll teach you." "Great, I'm going crazy." Alan was a little happy when he heard this. He had been wearing it for more than 10 minutes, during which he made several mistakes with the belt and had lost patience. Currently, Alan is a bit irritable. On the other side, Amin also finished it and was pointing Thomas on how to dress. Thomas self-deprecatingly said, "Excited to join the army, I can't even handle a piece of clothing. The difference is too big. Friends, don't mention today's events, it's embarrassing." Thomas has a gentle and casual personality, and is quite easy to get along with. Under Ren's guidance, Alan finally put on the training soldier uniform, appearing full of enthusiasm. "Don't worry, I don't want others to know about this either." The four of them chatted for a while, and Thomas brewed a pot of inferior black tea with the hot water he brought and poured a cup for each of them. Ren is drinking black tea, and the taste is quite good. Thomas comes from the Tarast district of the Ern city south of the Wall of Roses. I can barely count myself as a city resident. My father is a carpenter, and although he is not wealthy, he is not as poor as Ren. He claims to have joined the army because of his interest. "Why are you joining the army?" Thomas put down his cup and asked. "In order to see the outside world," Amin casually replied. "In order to drive out, kill, all the giants," Alan said with great energy. "Count me in, I'm pretty much the same," Ren added. Alan was taken aback and looked at the other person in surprise. It was so rare that someone had the same idea. Ren knew that Alan came to join the investigative corps to drive out the giants, and his goal was the same. However, his reasons were much simpler. "There's nothing else, just come find something to do." In fact, the original Ren also had the idea of joining the investigative corps to expel the giant, because his father was killed because of the influx of refugees and deep hunting in the forest. The fundamental reason is that the giant took away the Wall of Maria, and humanity lost a large area of land. He was just unlucky and died before he could recruit anyone. After Ryan passed through, having 2 years of experience as a knight in a different continent, he could not have become a shrunken turtle without even seeing a giant, and staying behind may not be safe. He really doesn't know much about this world, but he is much stronger than ordinary people. You can't be cowardly. If you don't work hard, there won't be a way out. No matter how powerful the giant is, you have to fight before you know. Alan was a bit surprised. He came on the first day of registration. He stayed here for 4 days, and it's not that he hasn't talked to anyone before. Not to mention who has the same goal as him, it's polite not to mock him when he hears about his ambitions. Ren, why do you think so? You seem to be from within the wall of roses, right? Amin asked curiously. I am a hunter. After my father died 2 years ago, I lived alone. The only forest I now own has gradually disappeared, and I am homeless. That's right, he's already homeless, whether it's the original Ren or the current Ren, they are all the kind of people with nothing. Of course, one cannot talk about their own affairs. Ren shared some of his original experiences with them. You said you lived hunting alone at the age of 10 and spent 2 years like this. Thomas was somewhat shocked. He doesn't know how to hunt, but when he thinks about it, he knows how difficult it is, especially now that the forest area is greatly reduced. Alan and Amin also looked at Ren in surprise. They had actually gone to open up land for 2 years before because they were not 12 years old. Although life is tough, at least it's better to barely have food supply than to find food alone. Ren smiled and didn't say much. The original young man was very strong, and even with the help of villagers, it was difficult for a 10-year-old child to make a living by hunting. Some people have already given their all just to live, that's him. He actually admires him as a traveler. Ren died of his stubbornness, determined to protect the forest as a hunter. If he chooses to reclaim land, perhaps he won't die. Let's work together and strive to join the investigative corps. Alan exclaimed excitedly, extending his hand. It's a deal. Ren held Alan's hand and agreed to fight together. Although it may seem a bit playful, both of them took it seriously in their hearts. In fact, at the end of the day, Ren is only 16 years old. Although he used to be a warrior, he is still a teenager. Plus, reading less books makes it difficult to be too mature. Many people don't know that they reached an agreement on the first day they met, although their starting points were not quite the same. Freedom. Freedom. Ryan. Do you mean we can't discuss it? Amin was a bit happy for Alan, but Thomas just smiled and didn't speak. Joining the investigation corps or something, he still felt a bit crazy. How could humans possibly defeat giants? It is difficult for ordinary people to defeat giants, but monsters can give it a try. The next day, the instructors discussed some issues such as uniform wearing and standing posture on the training ground. The most important one was the salute of giving the heart, which involved clenching the right hand and lifting the fingers upwards in front of the left chest heart. Ren observed the training ground surrounded by a circular mountain wall, with about 300 people on the field. Today is the last day of registration. The training has not started yet. Tomorrow, there will be a new recruit joining ceremony. After the joining ceremony, we will immediately enter the training mode. A month only has 2 days off at the end of the month, which can be called devil training. The elimination rate, disability rate, and mortality rate are relatively high. To put it bluntly, it would be considered good if more than 200 people could successfully graduate in the end. The training corps is also a military unit, not for fun. The soldiers trained here are capable of fighting against giants. Of course, whether they have the courage to investigate the corps after graduation is another matter. In short, the training is very strict. Just now, the black bald instructor on stage, who claimed to be Keith Shoddy's, said that he will train these young boys and girls hard and let Ren and the others know what military training is. There's nothing extra to do today. Ren tidied up the bed. Thomas is his upper bunk, and Alan is also his lower bunk. Alan's good friend. The cute boy Amin. Is Alan's upper bunk. The 4 of them cleaned this small dormitory again, and they were quite lucky. Many people still had to squeeze into the collective dormitory. The next day, the sky was clear and the sun was shining brightly. 317 training soldiers are wearing uniforms and standing in a square formation on the big playground. Today is the joining ceremony, and after today, they will officially start training. A dozen or so instructors stood in front of the crowd, and then a middle-aged man with a black bald head wearing military uniform walked up to the high platform, watching the new recruits loudly say, "Today is the 104 new recruitment ceremony, and I was unlucky enough to be sent to supervise you, Keith Shotties. I tell you, I don't welcome you at all. You are now livestock, food for giants. We will spend 3 years training you and teaching you the skills to fight against giants. After 3 years, standing in front of the giants, whether you are still food, becoming a wall of honor for the guardian king, or a glorious soldier driving out the giants, will be up to you to decide." After Coach Keith finished speaking, he asked some trainers who had witnessed giants eating humans to stand up and stand aside. Ren glanced at around 20 people, all of whom had witnessed the terrifying nature of giants, including Alan and Sanesa. As for the remaining nearly 300 people, I'm sorry, they will soon be criticized by Instructor Keith for doubting their lives. End of this chapter. Can spiritual baptism be called cursing? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Can spiritual baptism be called cursing? On the playground, a whole hour has passed. After saying a few opening remarks, the instructor who claimed to be Keith Shotties started the fight mode. One by one training soldiers fought against him, and ordinary sprayers were not worthy of lifting his shoes. Except for the phrase, "Go eat for the giant," his insults don't carry any substance. The vocabulary is really amazing. In the anime, this segment is only a few minutes long, but in reality, except for more than 20 people who have seen hell, everyone has to be scolded once. Nearly 300 people, 1.5 minutes would take over 2 hours. Ryan looked at Instructor Keith with a hint of admiration in his eyes. It's been an hour since saliva splattered, isn't it even necessary to drink water? Finally, Bald Keith took out a water bag and took a sip of water, moistening his throat. Then, he continued to spray. Spiritual baptism, and Amin became the object of his baptism this time. Keith looked at him with a gloomy face and shouted fiercely, "Who are you, kid?" Amin's body trembled, and then his right hand suddenly bowed to his left chest, then loudly replied. "Yes. Born in the Higashina district. Amin Arnold." Coach Keith just sneered, "Really? That name sounds really stupid. Did your parents choose it?" Amin was somewhat frightened by Keith's fierce expression and replied in a cold sweat, "The name was given by Grandpa." "Amin, what are you doing here?" "To help humanity achieve victory." Coach Keith said disdainfully, "Really? Then you can go and serve as the food for the giants." Subsequently, Instructor Keith twisted Amin's head back with both hands and said, "Third column. Turn back." Ren just silently watched, and soon it was his turn to be scolded. Suddenly, he felt like he was being scolded by his homeroom teacher at school, so scared. Without stopping, Coach Keith, who had taken a sip of water, filled up the blue and walked arrogantly to the next boy with yellow hair and thick eyebrows, who was Ren's good upper bunk. "Who are you again?" The young man with yellow hair and an inch head pounded his chest and saluted, answering nervously. "Yes. Born in the district of Trost. His name is Thomas Wagner." "The sound is too low." "Yes. Coming from the Tarast district." "I didn't hear it." Not far from the side, another senior instructor from the training corps, like Keith, and a young instructor walked past the front of the team. The senior instructor with silver hair and glasses chuckled lightly and said to a young instructor beside him, "These children are actually quite good. You did the same thing when you first became a trainer, right?" The young instructor smiled with a nostalgic expression and said, "Yes, it's really a bit nostalgic. But when it comes to shouting at them like this, does it have any special significance?" To roster background. No. You are from a pigsty where pigs and dogs are inferior. Yes. I'm not as good as a pig or a dog. A female trainer had never seen this scene before and was frightened into incoherence. The young instructor was also somewhat speechless. When he was a trainee, he didn't go through such intense training, so he asked. What's the point of scaring them like this? The silver-haired instructor smiled and supported his glasses, saying as he walked. This is a ritual of spiritual baptism, which completely denies oneself to this day and cultivates talents suitable for becoming soldiers in a brand new state. This is a necessary process. Sacrifice your life for the peace of humanity. Fourth column. Turn back. The young instructor was still puzzled, as he did not give a lecture to some people when he saw Coach Keith passing by. Why haven't those children been spiritually baptized? The silver-haired instructor turned his head to look at the direction pointed by the young instructor, smiled, and said. For those who have already been baptized, there is no need to say much. They probably went through the hell 2 years ago, and their expressions are clearly different from the other children. Alright, let's go, let's leave this to Keith. After speaking, the silver-haired instructor and the young instructor walked to other places. And here, Instructor Keith approached a brown-haired boy with fierce eyes fixed on him. What's your name, kid? The brown-haired boy's right hand was pressed against his left chest and said calmly, born in Tarast, Jean Kirchstein. What are you doing here? My wish is to join the Constitutional Army and live in the mainland in the future. He chuckled as he quickly regained his composure and was stunned by his loud voice. The training soldiers next to them all looked at the confident boy with surprised eyes who said he was going to live in mainland China. Many people actually think the same way, but few people are so straightforward. Really? Instructor Keith's face darkened and he sneered, so you want to go to the mainland? Yes. Jean Kirchstein responded with some joy, thinking that the instructor in front of him agreed with his choice. I can only say that he is too naive. Bang! With a muffled sound, he was greeted with a headshot. Woo, let's cover our noses and fall to the ground, tears streaming down our faces. As is well known, the nose is a sensitive part of the human body, and hitting it can be very sour and refreshing. Instructor Keith just gave a cold smile and said, the guy who is deflated now doesn't have a chance to join the Constitutional Army. Ignoring the person sitting on the ground, Instructor Keith approached the next trainer, who was still a boy. What's your name? What are you here for? The boy had some freckles on his face and looked very honest and obedient, but when Coach Keith shouted, he suddenly felt a cold sweat on his forehead. Yes. My name is Marco Bot, and I come from the town of Janaya in the south of the Wall of Roses. I came here to join the Constitutional Legion. I hope to sacrifice my body for the king. What to offer? Damn it, the corner of Ryan's mouth twitched as he listened. Are honest people so open now? Hee hee. Is that right? Instructor Keith squinted his eyes and gave a sinister smile before slowly saying, it's really amazing. Let's make it our goal, but... Halfway through, Instructor Keith's face suddenly approached Mark's face, staring at him with a playful expression. I don't think the king would want your small body. Marco Polo. Cough, Marco Bot's face turned white and he was sweating profusely. Instructor Keith then turned around and walked away. Time slowly passed by. Quickly, Instructor Keith came to a boy with short shaved hair and almost bald head, roaring at him with ferocity. What's your name, kid? The shorter boy was a bit flustered. He clenched his left fist firmly on his right chest and loudly replied. Connie Springer. Born in the village of Rajako, south of the Wall of Roses. Pop. Connie's body was lifted up by Coach Keith with his hands gripping his head, and his eyes were torn into oblique triangular eyes. Connie was greeted with a roar. On the contrary. Connie Springer. I told you all from the beginning, this saluting gesture represents the determination to donate your heart to the country. Does your heart grow on the right side? It's a bit funny, but Ren is no longer in the mood to watch Connie's jokes. He helplessly reminds Sasha beside him. Sasha, stop eating. The instructor is coming over. Sasha didn't even stop eating sweet potatoes and said vaguely, "It's okay, steamed sweet potatoes don't taste good when they cool down." Ren covered his face. Sasha is going to have bad luck. What kind of spiritual baptism is this? He felt that today the instructor came specifically to Leeway to give the new recruits some color to see. Ka. Gollum. A crisp chewing sound suddenly came out, and Coach Keith's face instantly became very ugly. He slowly turned his head to look at the source of the sound. That is a girl with brown-red hair tied in a ponytail, her big eyes slightly silly and cute. At this moment, she is holding a steaming sweet potato in her hand and stuffing it into her mouth. Eating and swallowing, as if no one is around. No, there's another teenager trying to persuade her not to eat anymore. Humph, doesn't being an old man exist? Coach Keith finally put down Connie, who had been tormented enough, and his face was so black that it almost dripped water. He walked over ferociously, and a cold voice came from between his teeth. "Hey! Who are you, kid?" Sasha seemed to not hear for a moment, her eyes wandering around, constantly stuffing food into her mouth. Ryan is speechless, this girl is hopeless. Ignored, Coach Keith's forehead was bulging with veins, already filled with anger. He strode over to the ponytail girl and shouted fiercely at her. "It's you. That's you. Who are you, kid?" "Ah." Sasha was frightened by a sudden roar and swallowed a mouthful of food. She instinctively saluted the military and replied. "I come from the village of Dow Jones Park in the south of the Wall of Roses. My name is Sasha Brous." "Sasha Bruce, what are you holding in your hand?" Instructor Keith's gloomy face turned toward Sasha, gritting his teeth and asking geologically. Sasha looked at Instructor Keith with a somewhat wary gaze and replied. "This is steamed sweet potato. When I passed by the kitchen before, I saw that it happened to be steaming, so I couldn't help but take one." "Did you steal this?" "Why? Why do you want to eat steamed sweet potatoes now?" Sasha looked nervously at Instructor Keith and said straightforwardly. "Because sweet potatoes don't taste good when they're cold, I've decided to eat them now." Okay, maybe in Sasha's eyes, eating is still more important. Instructor Keith lowered his head and looked down at Sasha, his face as black as ink. "No, you still don't understand. I mean, why do you want to eat steamed sweet potatoes?" Sasha was taken aback for a moment, and according to her own understanding, she asked in reverse, "Are you asking, why do people eat steamed sweet potatoes?" Ren couldn't help but burst out laughing when he saw this, as the two were completely chatting across servers. Instructor Kiss remained silent with a gloomy face, and many people around him looked curiously at Sasha when they heard this strange dialogue scene. Sigh. Sasha suddenly sighed and suddenly realized. With great determination, he broke the steamed sweet potato into two halves and handed a small portion to Instructor Keith. "Shit. Give you half," Sasha said with a painful expression on her face. Instructor Keith instinctively took half a steamed sweet potato and couldn't keep up with Sasha's brain circuit. Ryan on the side can't help it anymore. "Are you trying to laugh at me and inherit my Aunt Flower?" 1.5. Bald Keith said subconsciously. Sasha saw Coach Keith take the steamed sweet potatoes and thought he also loved to eat sweet potatoes, so he smiled a bit foolishly for a moment. Coach Keith suddenly showed a fatherly smile and said, "Sasha Bruce, right. That's great. You ran all the way in the afternoon until you only had one breath left. Also, you don't have to eat dinner anymore." Ignoring Sasha's face of collapse, Coach Keith approached Ren. "Little ghost, did you laugh so happily just now? What's so funny? Speaking it out makes me happy too." End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Just 5,000 meters. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Just 5,000 meters. Coach Keith had a dark face and glared at Ryan. "Who are you, kid?" "Yes. Ryan Ackermann, from the village of Dow Jones Park in the southern district of the Wall of Roses. Ryan immediately saluted and replied. Instructor Keith snorted coldly, "Oh. That sweet potato girl's fellow townsman. What are you doing here? Eating sweet potatoes. Ha!" A burst of laughter echoed around. The disaster extends to the pond fish. Ren felt a little helpless and looked serious. Come here for training. From the giant food in your mouth, become a soldier who can fight against giants. Feeling the firmness in his words, Keith frowned. Oh, not bad. I hope you don't get scared and silly then. After speaking, he left with great force. Ren had a calm expression on his face and didn't say anything bold to refute him. He was just talking nonsense, who wouldn't know? He also shouted to the head of their knights in the previous world to kill all the orcs. As a result, when I first went to the battlefield and saw those ferocious orcs with an average height of over 2 meters, I was so scared that even my sword-holding hand trembled. Afterwards, I was ridiculed by my seniors for a long time, and I can only say that I was too young at that time. Output cannot rely on roaring, so the strongest king is the one who doesn't hesitate to fight enemies with real swords and guns. Coach Keith's other abilities are currently unknown, but what can be confirmed now is that he is really skilled at cursing. Ranked high in the top 3 of the world's top speechless rankings, but there are rumors circulating that he is the former commander of the investigative corps, so he probably has 2 tricks. More than an hour has passed. Except for the 20 or so people who don't need to be trained, nearly 300 others have already sprayed. The spiritual baptism has been completed. Instructor Keith took another sip of water, feeling somewhat unsatisfied. He strode up to the high platform in front of the training soldiers and said coldly. New recruits, the joining ceremony has ended. Do you feel relieved that you can become a formal trainer now? Isn't it? The trainees who had just relaxed off stage suddenly fell silent, realizing that things were not so simple. Instructor Keith took 2 steps forward and said expressionlessly. How beautiful. There will be a 5,000-meter run this afternoon, circling the playground 10 times. Let's consider it as a small test. I don't care how fast you run, but the last 5 to reach the finish line. Instructor Keith paused for a moment and then shouted fiercely, pack your own luggage and get out of here. We don't want any waste here. Oh my God, did I hear you right? It's 5,000 meters instead of 500 meters. Too ruthless, it will kill people. Damn it, we have to eliminate 5 of them before we even start training, and we can't keep them alive. The trainees under the stage suddenly howled and complained, this is only their first day in the regiment. Is it really good to just mess around with them like this? Ren didn't feel good either. Sasha tearfully grabbed his hand and said, Ren, please help me with some dinner, otherwise I'll starve to death. Sasha then realized why Coach Keith said she had to run until there was only 1 breath left, and others could stop after running 5,000 meters, so she had to continue running. The most important thing is, we don't even give dinner. Ryan's mouth twitched, can he starve to death without eating a meal? How come I don't know? However, as a fellow villager, I still have to do a favor. It's okay, I'll leave you some bread for dinner. Sasha's eyes lit up as if she was looking at bread. She gratefully said, thank you, you're such a good person. Ding. Congratulations to the host for receiving a good person card. Ren shook his head and realized that his divine system was not good at all, otherwise he wouldn't have been in trouble. As for that good person card, forget it, let's just accumulate character. At noon in the cafeteria, Ren took a piece of bread, made some broth, and sat with Thomas to eat. As for why the 2 of them didn't sit together with Alan Amin and Mikasa, I'm sorry, he didn't have the habit of being an electric cannon. The protagonist of the other person is taking 2 girls. One girl is having dinner with a roommate, why did he come along? Why, do you still want to soak the 3rd master with 8 abdominal muscles? Have you read too many YY novels? By the way, these past few days Ren and Sanri have also made contact. He found that Sanri was not very difficult to get along with, and even Sanri asked Ren's father's name, but she did not hear Ren's father's name. Her expression seemed a bit unwilling. Ren didn't think much about it. He didn't think there was any kinship between General Ren and Mikasa Ackermann. He had most of General Ren's memories, but he didn't hear that his father had any relatives. The surname is the same, there are still 300,000 Zhang Wei on Earth. Are they all brothers? Thomas, sitting across from Ryan and drinking vegetable soup with a spoon, asked, "Ryan, aren't you worried about the afternoon run? The last 5 are going to be eliminated." "Don't worry, it's just 5,000 meters, just hold on a bit," Ren said calmly. Thomas is a bit speechless, "Don't say it like it's 500 meters. That's 5 kilometers. It's not that." Ren doesn't care. Last time he wore clothes to a different continent and joined the Border Knights as a knight apprentice. A month later, the 5,000-meter run became basic training, once in the morning every day. 10,000 meters 3 months later, and a year and a half later, he graduated and became a regular knight, 20,000 meters a day. He stayed there for about 2 years and 3 months in total, and the total distance of his running training was about a quarter of running around the Earth. Is he proud? Of course, he has only been wearing it for a month now, and the level of transformation and enhancement of the divine fighting spirit on the physical body is still very low. Due to the lack of something, the progress is moving. However, he found that the potential of this body itself was astonishing, with a slight improvement in physical fitness every day, not just a result of divine fighting spirit. Thinking of the sudden burst of much stronger strength and control over the body before the death of the original Ren. Does this person's bloodline seem a bit powerful? So it seems that Mikasa's strength is not due to her mother's Eastern ancestry, but rather her father's Ackermann ancestry. He asked Mikasa about it, but he also knew nothing about it. Of particular note, he had just awakened, and Mikasa had awakened nearly 3 years earlier than his bloodline, with even more developed muscles. These thoughts flashed through Ren's heart, but he realized that his father was just a normal person and nothing special. Perhaps it was the innate talent of the original Ren. Anyway, the hardware configuration is okay. Maybe after hard training, I can surpass myself from another continent. Maybe in the future, I will be even stronger than someone who is 1.6 meters tall. The sacred fighting spirit that is a bit incompatible with the local environment cannot be relied on. It is not used to deal with giants and its appearance is very poor, so it still needs to work hard to exercise. In the afternoon, 317 trainees crowded onto the track on the playground, waiting for orders. Many of them had a bitter expression on their faces. Strictly speaking, it's not called a runway, there's no rubber, and cement is even more impossible. It's not unnecessary, just a few white lines were drawn on the ground. Many people are pushing forward, hoping to grab a good position. After all, with over 300 people, although the venue is spacious, it is impossible for them to run neatly. As long as they don't fight, the instructor will not care. A 400-meter-long track, 5,000 meters means you need to run 12.5 laps. Coach Keith won't care if you run fast or slow, anyway, the last 5 will be rolled out. Ren stood behind the crowd. Running long is not a sprint, there is no need to rush like that, and he is also very confident. For him now, 5,000 meters may seem a bit arrogant, but it's just a moderate level. Bang! An instructor fired a signal flare into the sky, and suddenly the crowd surged forward like a tide. The trainees rushed forward eagerly. Although only the last 5 arrived were eliminated, everyone did not want to fall behind from the beginning. Ryan is neither too slow nor too fast, controlling his breathing rhythm, maintaining his position in the middle of the team. He's in a hurry, not throwing. He looked at the front of the team and saw Alan running almost at the forefront of the team, with Mikasa silently following behind him. As for the others next to them, I don't know them at the moment. Thomas is a little ahead of Ren. Amin. Hey, where's Amin? Ren shook his head and brain for a while, only to find him behind him. Well, from Amin's delicate appearance, you can tell that his physical fitness is not very good. However, as a woman, the second male lead, he will definitely not be eliminated. Ren was noticed by a girl with black hair and 2 ponytails next to him as he paddled happily. You seem to be relaxed, why don't you run faster? Ren turned his head to look at the cute girl next to him and said, don't worry, this is just the second round. Mina, with her black double ponytails, was taken aback. Hello, I'm Mina Carolina. What I mean is, don't you try to show off. Although there's no reward for running fast, many instructors are observing. Upon hearing this, Ren looked outside and indeed almost all the instructors came to observe. He just smiled and said, I'm Ryan Ackermann. Don't worry, after waiting for 4 laps, many people won't be able to do it anymore. I'll make it easier for me to catch up then. Mina chuckled lightly and said, after 4 laps, aren't you tired? Ren shook his head, exhausted from knitting. Besides, pretending to be forced has always been your side singing before I appeared. Didn't you see that, pig feet are pretending now? He has no intention of pretending to be a pig and eating a tiger. I just want to see how others will feel helpless after being surpassed by him, and then give them a cool song. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Perseverance and face fighting always parallel. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Perseverance and face fighting always parallel. As expected, after 4 rounds, many people looked like they were about to die suddenly. At the end of the day, it's a group of teenagers around 12 and 13 years old who are still chasing each other and afraid of falling behind when running. In the 5th lap, Ren stopped fishing and turned to look at Mina. Take a step first. He slowly increased his speed, and the intangible and intangible divine fighting spirit flowed along the meridians to his limbs and bones, steadily moving forward like a gust of wind. Mina stared at Ren's rapidly disappearing figure, feeling speechless. If she surpassed me, she would surpass me. Why did she even remind me? Everyone ran 5 laps together, doesn't that make her look useless? She gritted her teeth and wanted to catch up, but she didn't have any extra energy left. Maintaining her current speed was already the limit. Ren didn't think too much and had already caught up with Thomas running not far in front of him. He reached out and patted the shoulder of the upper bunk, then accelerated to shake him off, leaving only a graceful figure for him. Thomas looked bewildered and quickly shouted. Wait for me. Damn it, if you're powerful, why bother reminding me? Ryan. Alright, I'm just pretending to be forced. If it's a brother, come after me and attack me. Along the way, sparks and lightning flashed, and Ren gradually ran to the front row of the team, causing a lot of hatred along the way. Perhaps it's because of his bad taste, he often spends more than 10 seconds in parallel with others before surpassing them in their unwilling expressions. Ryan. Young man, have you ever experienced despair? At this point it was already the 8th lap, and Ren was running on Alan's left. The protagonist was not doing well, and Alan's face turned red and he was sweating profusely. He gritted his teeth and insisted on running forward. It can be said that he is very hard-working, and Ren expressed his appreciation. Obviously, he is not afraid of being eliminated to fight like this. Alan also saw his roommate Ren, but he was no longer in the mood to say hello. Instead, he followed his 3rd son closely, just panting a bit. Obviously, he was far from reaching his limit. Should he truly be the 3rd son? Ren glanced around, followed by Sasha and a small bald man named Connie, and to the left was a handsome brown-haired man in marked polo with freckles on his face. But there were 3 people in front of him. One was a tall and sturdy male trainer with yellow hair and a short head. Beside him was a tall male trainer with black hair. In addition to the 2 of them, there is also a cold beauty with blonde hair and blue eyes, and curled hair. These 3 not only have a relatively fast pace, but also a steady breathing rhythm. Seems like you've practiced it before. Ryan became a little curious and ran to the side of the burly boy with yellow hair and an inch head. "Hello, have you two practiced long-distance running?" Lena looked at Ren in surprise. "When did this person appear?" "Yeah, I've always wanted to join the military before, so we exercise when we have free time." Lena smiled and said Betterhold next to Lena seemed to be less talkative and just nodded. Not very familiar, and Ren didn't ask much. He exchanged names with the two of them, and he had a slight impression of them. He maintains this speed and runs with these people, although it's not impossible to run faster, it's not necessary. It's not about participating in the Olympics, and there's no reward for winning first place. In the last 2 laps, many people looked like they were about to die suddenly, sweating profusely and running around. Alan was already rolling his eyes, unable to charge forward so fast, so he could only grit his teeth and hold on. A few people are kneeling on the ground and have given up treatment. Ryan arrived the 3rd time, but unfortunately there was no reward. Amin's physical strength is not good, almost lifting the tail. However, some people are even worse off than him. Fortunately, this was a terrible test that ultimately eliminated 5 unlucky faces. As for the name, everyone has their own imagination. On the field, a group of young boys and girls sat paralyzed, some pounding their legs, some lying on the ground panting heavily, and everyone was exhausted. Finally, there was only one person left running on the field, Sasha Brous, nicknamed Sweet Potato Girl. Ryan spread out his hand. It wasn't that he wasn't loyal enough, he couldn't save her. Seeing that everyone had finished running, Black Bald head coach Keith arrived and said a lot, roughly meaning, "You are the worst training soldiers I have ever led." It's actually nothing, as those who have studied know, there are always a few teachers who will say the same, just get used to it. Years later, Keith Shoddy's face was swollen from the beating. He never expected that this training session would be so powerful, and only 5 wisdom giants had infiltrated, totaling only 9 wisdom giants. There aren't many normal people in the top 10 of the final assessment. After running, there won't be much to do today. After all, it's just a joining ceremony. Of course, those who almost froth won't think so. Tomorrow's formal training, the first level is to test the trainer's control over balance on the trigeminal balance equipment. This is to prepare for the use of a 3-dimensional maneuvering device. If you don't meet the standard within 2 days, you can say goodbye here. At that time, another group of people will be eliminated. At around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the sunset set in the west, and the sunset dyed half of the sky red. The meal is almost here, and many people have gathered at the entrance of the cafeteria. Ren has also arrived. After all, he promised to help Sasha get a piece of bread. "Look, that Sweet Potato Girl is still running." A trainer pointed at Sasha, who was weak and unable to jog on the playground, and sneered. "Yeah, it's been 5 hours now, it's really amazing stamina." "Hey, that Sweet Potato Girl is your fellow villager, isn't she? Huh, won't you go help her?" A trainer seemed to recognize Ren standing next to Sasha this morning, mocking him. Ren rolled his eyes. Bored people are everywhere. He rudely retorted back. "What's wrong with sweet potatoes? Did you eat your rice or drink your water? If not, just shut up." The person sneered and didn't know what to say, didn't provoke Ren anymore, and he didn't necessarily have to argue with him. Mina, a cute girl with black hair and double ponytails, said, "Look, someone has already quit." On the nearby slope, a carriage carrying several abandoned people left, not the 5 who were eliminated from running. Those 5 people have already left, they are the ones who voluntarily gave up. Surprisingly willing to just go back and move stones and pull grass like this. Mark Bot sighed. There's no way, people without ability can only be eliminated. AI Ethical said naturally. Ren didn't speak, he knew that the little angel Alan would soon be slapped in the face. At dinner, Ren shamelessly took an extra piece of bread and sat alone to eat. Thomas and a group of people were gathering around Alan to inquire about giants. Little bald Connie asked Alan questions like a curious baby, all about giants, and there were also many onlookers around. Alan's face gradually looked a bit ugly, not because of Connie and everyone's inquiries, but because he remembered those bad memories. However, Alan patiently told them what he had seen and heard that day. When Connie asked what an ordinary giant looked like, Alan's spoon fell into the soup box. He couldn't help but recall the giant that had eaten his mother, blood splattering in the air, and he could only watch it all helplessly, powerless. Apart from despair, there is only despair. You can't save your mother because you don't have the strength. Uncle Hannes's words seemed to echo in his ears, and Alan instinctively clenched his fist. Smart and careful Mark Bot discovered Alan's anomaly and reminded everyone not to ask further questions. This is not a pleasant thing, especially for those who have lost loved ones. Alan reluctantly regained his composure and loudly declared to the crowd, "Giants are nothing special. I will definitely join the investigative corps and kill all the giants." With a sneer, Jean Kirchstein sneered, "Hey, are you serious? Do you want to join the investigative corps?" Alan turned his head and saw Ran. He also had a slight impression of Ran, but he didn't have a good impression. "That's right, you're the coward who said you want to join the Constitutional Army and live a comfortable life in the mainland, right?" "Yeah, because I'm straightforward. Unlike some people who are afraid to death, they have to pretend to be brave and fearless." Let Bao support his head with one hand and naturally say. Alan Tang stood up suddenly and said with an expression of displeasure. "Are you talking about me?" "Hey, I didn't mean to specifically point out anyone." Jean stood up unwilling to be outdone. The two quickly got together, staring at each other, and everyone just silently watched. Is this going to be a fight? Ren also saw this scene, without any intention of stopping it. Some people are born with facial expressions. Alan's hot-blooded impulses make reality rational, but both of them have sharp personalities, and their current ideals and aspirations are almost opposite. It's not normal to not argue, just fight a few more. Dang! At this moment, a bell rang for rest time, causing both Alan and I to be taken aback and not engage in a fight. We reconciled accordingly. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Is enough to be your grandmother. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 is enough to be your grandmother. On the first day of joining the army, the two of them restrained themselves to some extent. Alan turned around and left, walking outside the cafeteria. And when Rang Bao met his goddess, Sanli with flowing black hair, Rang blushed and approached him. However, Sanyi only had Alan in his heart, so he casually said a word to him and left. The brown-haired boy Rang Bao, his face flushed, quietly chased after the gradually receding figure of Sanli. He felt her heart beating faster. She was so beautiful, with flowing black long hair, delicate face, pink thin lips. All of which made him fall for it. On the side, Ren also saw this classic scene, which made him like black and straight. Unfortunately, Licking Dog was destined to have nothing, and Mikasa would soon cut his hair to shoulder length. The news of the present world came too fast, and I was chased out. I found that the goddess I had just met and the fool I had just scolded were acquaintances. Let's Sigma, degree winky face. Quickly, Alan reminded Sanasa to cut off her hair to avoid getting in the way when using the 3D maneuvering device. Let Ellen, we have another grudge between us. Humph! Little bald Connie walked out of the cafeteria, humming an unknown tune and passing by in front of Jean Kirchstein. Immersed in the sad news that Sanasa was about to cut off her long hair, she instinctively wiped Connie's back with her hand that had not dried her tears. Connie was startled and turned around to see someone wiping his hands with his own clothes. Suddenly, I was furious. Hello. What did you do? What did you wipe on me? It's trust between people. It's water, don't worry, it can be washed clean, he replied casually, without even looking at Connie. Connie looked bewildered, feeling extremely cold. Who knows if this is a runny nose? Ren ignored these trivial matters and walked up to Sasha, who was really just about to take a breath, holding the bread. Schwa. Sasha made a sudden charge and snatched the bread from Ren's hand. I ate a clean meal 3 times, 5 times, and 2 times. The speed of grabbing bread was too fast, and Ren felt that even someone else might not be able to react. Ren, is there anything else? Sasha looked at him eagerly. Ren was speechless and had a piece of yarn. It was all shameless to ask the cafeteria lady for it. Just as Ren was feeling a bit lost, a cute girl with blonde hair, blue big eyes, and a small figure walked over holding a piece of bread and a kettle. She looked at Sasha with some uncertainty and said, "Well, I helped you get something to eat. You need." "Oh my God, goddess." Sasha pounced and took the bread and stuffed it into her mouth. The blonde girl gently handed over the kettle, and Sasha collapsed into her arms exhausted after finishing. Ren's mouth twitched. He was also very handsome, with black hair and blue eyes, and a face of mixed Chinese and Western blood. He also handed over bread. Why didn't he call him a god? He has a certain impression of this blonde girl, it seems to be called Harista. Harista struggled to support the sleeping Sasha before Ren could come forward to help. A tall female trainer with black hair and a black ponytail came over to help Sasha. The black-haired female trainer looked at Harista and said, "Do you want to do something good? Is the effort put in proportional to the reward?" Harista was taken aback, unsure of how to answer. "Humph, forget it, I'll help you carry her back, just sell her personal feelings." "Do you also want to do something good?" Harista asked subconsciously. "No, I just have expectations for this guy's foolishness." Black-haired female soldier Yumi smiled. Ren rolled his eyes aside and said, "Did you praise people like that? Yo, isn't this the fellow townsman of Sweet Potato Girl? Little brother, do you have any dissatisfaction with me?" Yumi's mouth seemed very venomous, mocking. "Humph, just call me brother. There's nothing to complain about, and thank you for helping to carry Sasha back." Ren snorted in displeasure. Don't look at him now with a 12-year-old face, but he is already 16 years old, enough to be her brother. 12 years old is the minimum age for joining the military, and there are also 13 or 14 years old trainees who arrive, but there are hardly any over 16 years old. Ha ha ha. Don't be funny, little brother. Believe it or not, I can be your grandmother. The black-haired ponytail teased Yumi. Hee hee. I'm so hot-tempered, this is provocation, right? I really thought you were a woman, so I won't beat you up. Of course, Ren is not sure. Yumi's experience is very complicated, and to be specific, he can write tens of thousands of words. She once turned into a mindless giant and wandered outside the wall for decades, accidentally eating a Malay warrior with the power of a wise giant. Now she is the host of the Exigeant. If we count the years when we became mindless giants, we can indeed become Ren's grandmother. Alright, stop arguing and send her back first. Harista stopped Ren and Yumi from arguing. Ren shrugged and didn't say much. He had to rely on the sharp-tongued black-haired woman to escort Sasha back to the girls' dormitory. Otherwise, relying solely on the cute blonde sister Harista to carry Sasha back would be a bit overwhelming. As the saying goes, pretending to be forced and slapping face always go hand in hand. In terms of age, he is not enough for someone to slap him with one hand. After Ryan returned to the dormitory, everyone was ready to go to bed and didn't chat much. Tomorrow, we need to test our balance and adaptability. It's better to go to bed early. After a sleepless night dreaming of Duke Zhou, the next day, Ren was awakened by a roar. You have 10 minutes to wash up, then gather next to you, listen to the whistle, set off, circle around the campsite 10 times, and after running, gather at the entrance of the cafeteria for a balance adaptability test. Coach Keith's loud voice was not loud, and everyone was awakened. The wash basin in the male dormitory is located behind the dormitory. It uses a faucet, which gives a very modern feeling. The technology tree of the giant world is very magical. The world inside the wall is not even at the level of World War I, but it has the unreasonable black technology of three-dimensional maneuvering devices. But the Constitutional Army still uses firearms. With the deterrence of eliminating 5 people in yesterday's 5,000-meter race, although many people were sore all over in the morning, no one dared to complain. It seems that yesterday's spiritual baptism and establishment were quite successful. The new recruits were all very honest. If they were driven back to move stones and pull grass, there would be no place to cry. After the morning run, everyone who hastily finished breakfast came to the side of the 5-forked balance trainers. The operation of a three-dimensional maneuvering device is far from as simple as it appears. After all, it allows people who are accustomed to two-dimensional space to move in three-dimensional space. Going to heaven is not an easy task, so before operating a three-dimensional maneuvering device, you need to hang it on the balance equipment for a period of time and test its adaptability. This test can roughly show the potential of a new recruit to use a three-dimensional maneuvering device. On the field, Ren hung steadily on the balance simulator with almost no shaking. This adaptability test is actually quite challenging. If you can't meet the standard within 2 days, you can say goodbye here. Every round, dozens of new recruits will be eliminated. Oh, amazing Ren, you're putting a lot of pressure on me like this. Thomas was somewhat surprised by your almost perfect performance. Sigh. Ren sighed lightly, life is so lonely like snow. He hung steadily on the trainer like an old dog, enjoying the exclamation of everyone around him. Although it is very sentimental, what is the difference between not pretending to be forced and salted fish? Therefore, not only do you need to dress up, but you also need to dress up naturally and freshly. Currently, out of the remaining 309 trainees, more than 200 have been tested, with 187 qualified. Those who fail will have another chance tomorrow. So far, only Mikasa's performance can match that of Ren. There is no way he can do it. He was originally a modest person, but he really can't keep a low profile. Bang! Beside him, Alan fell head onto the ground, quite hard. Well, he felt pain looking at it anyway. It hurt so much. Alan hung half of his body in mid-air, holding his head and screaming in agony. Alan, are you okay? Upon hearing Alan's painful moans, Mikasa immediately ran towards him, put him down from the machinery, and gently and thoughtfully bandaged his forehead. I looked on the side with my eyes straight, wanting to replace it with a head bump. TSK. Ren sighed. If I remember correctly, Alan's belt had malfunctioned, otherwise he wouldn't have been so miserable. Seeing this, Ren also opened the safety buckle and jumped off the balance device. It's time to brush the presents. Of course, he did not intend to point out the issue with the belt. He used a faulty belt so that he could still maintain balance. But this may not necessarily be a bad thing, setbacks make people grow. Alan used a broken belt during the assessment to support it for 3 or 4 seconds. Alan is still too young, he needs to accept more social beating. Alan. You are really my good brother. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. I beat you, I apologize. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. I beat you, I apologize. Aren't you going to expel all the giants? Why can't you pass the first level? As soon as he approached, Ren heard a mocking voice coming from the crowd of onlookers. Today's test has ended, and now everyone around Alan is eating melons. Let's not say it, it's not good. Alan has already worked hard. Another voice came out. Marco Bot hopes to speak less and make his good friend Marco have a gentle personality, belonging to the kind of old people. In the original plot, Marco accidentally overheard the conversation of the Marley trio and directly received a boxed lunch. He was the earliest to fail in the top 10 of the training corps. I'm not wrong. This guy always clamors to kill all the giants. What's the result? Shouting slogans, who wouldn't? Let's mock Alan while secretly glancing at Mikasa beside him. Ren saw it and exclaimed, jealousy has separated the hostage wall. He had just squeezed into the crowd, with a familiar sour smell. The voice of Zhao Zhongxiang could be heard in his ear. Spring has arrived, all things are reviving, and it's time to meet again. The season when grass grows and horses are in heat. Hey hey. Don't crowd around, let's all scatter. As he approached, Ren pulled Jin's shoulder and pulled him in front of him. The force was quite strong, almost causing him to fall. He was so angry that his face turned red, and he stared at him and asked, "What are you doing?" Bang! Just as Ren was about to say a few harsh words, he didn't speak of martial arts and kicked him sideways without hesitation, tripping him up first. There's no such thing as a fight. Fighting is so enjoyable. He is actually excellent, but he is the squadron leader of the Bramble Knights on the border, with 50 men under his command. If he can't defeat you, I can go home and grow vegetables. Run. The opponent is too incompetent, and even pretending to be forced doesn't provide much experience. A side kick tripped him and caused him to fall to the ground, causing him to swallow all his harsh words back into his throat. Let Ren be glared fiercely, careless, without blinking. Ryan. Stop, don't do it. This time it's not right, but you shouldn't have hit someone, should you? What can't we talk about? For Ren's sudden move, Mark, who had a good friend and had never written a travelogue, was the first to react. He stared at Ren, afraid that he would have to deal with Ran again, and with great loyalty, he stood in front of Ran. Look, there are no reliable girlfriends. Those anime female leads and supporting roles are dragging their feet every day, with only the help of girlfriends. Of course, except for Sanyi, Demao Wang, Pao Jia, and Qi Zi Shui Jia, I don't really know how to beat him. Ren spread out his hand, indicating that he wouldn't bully the children. Just now, there was just a grasshopper on his foot. Marco, you misunderstood me. I just made him clear-headed. Ren felt like he was helping Rangbao. Otherwise, if he continued to mock him like this, it might have been Sanli who took action. Sanyi's actions were not as gentle as his. Humph, you'll take a look. Angered, he spoke harshly and stood up to squeeze out the crowd of onlookers before slipping away. Today, he was so humiliated that he didn't even see how the other person was doing it before being knocked down. Ryan shrugged his shoulders and didn't care, just watch an extra episode of Pleasant Goat. He said to the melon-eating crowd. Everyone has dispersed. The play has already finished. Everyone should go back to their own homes and find their own mothers. Whoever stays behind will be a fool. What nonsense. Everyone was speechless upon hearing this, but the crowd gradually dispersed. They had been watching Alan's jokes for a long time and there was nothing new. If they stayed, they might get beaten up. A cold and beautiful woman with blonde hair and blue eyes gave Ren an extra glance, of course not because she was interested in him, but because she felt that his side kick was a bit technical. Alan, who was practicing adaptability on the balance equipment, breathed a sigh of relief. Being surrounded by so many people and making a fool of oneself is not a wonderful experience. If it weren't for hanging on the equipment and not being able to come down easily, he would have taken action himself. Amin and Mikasa are both helping Alan. Amin is responsible for pulling Alan up, while Mikasa is responsible for helping Alan remove the dust from his body and treating the wound. Is everything okay? Why don't we take a break first? The third master was very considerate of Alan and helped him check the head he had fallen on. He gently said, "It's okay, it's just a bit swollen and red." "It's okay." Alan nodded at Sanri and then prepared to let Amin continue to pull him up. "Can we take a break first?" Sanesa grabbed Alan's hand, wanting him to stop and rest. "It's okay, I don't believe it anymore. I can't get through this level. Alan paused his hand and broke free from Mikasa's hand. He gestured for Amin to continue, fully displaying his steel-straight man nature. Ren didn't feel much at this scene, and he even respected Alan as a man and an indomitable person. Ren is also a steel-straight man. Originally, his emotional intelligence was not high. In those 2 years on the other continent, apart from training, he only fought against orcs and was not qualified to talk about love. Anyway, I'm still in my sophomore year. Anyway, for him, women can't be fooled and fights can't be avoided. Ren also pointed out to Alan that adaptability training mainly focuses on maintaining balance and placing the body's center of gravity on the waist and soles of the feet. In his opinion, there was nothing wrong with Alan's motor skills, even if he had pointed it out before Mikasa. He basically just repeats a few useless words. As for the matter of the belt breaking, it's not urgent, just practice as a load. Tell Ellen again tomorrow, it's just such a happy decision. After Ren pointed out Alan, he left directly. It didn't make much sense to stay and be a light bulb. As for Amin, he was so cute, how could he be considered a light bulb? Ryan Ackermann. A familiar roar sounded, and Coach Keith walked up behind Ryan at some point, staring at him expressionlessly. Arrive. Ryan instinctively turned around and saluted, damn it. This elusive ability is just like that of the class teacher back then. What is the situation? What is Bald Keith looking for him for? Drinking tea. It's you, kid. Run around the campsite 10 times and finish before dinner. Instructor Keith ordered coldly. Yes. Can you ask why? Ren expressed a bit puzzled, why punish him properly? Are you jealous of his handsome appearance? It's obvious that Coach Keith is not that bored. Humph. You're very good, you're going to fight the next day. If you don't punish me, who will you punish? Ren has lost his temper. The training corps is also an army, and the commander has given orders without any room for negotiation. He was a bit depressed and even observed his surroundings before taking action. He didn't see Coach Keith present, so his temper was unlikely to give a small report. Who exactly told the secret? After Ryan left, Instructor Keith walked up to Jean again and said, circle the campsite 5 times. What? Why should I be punished for running away? It made me look confused. Is it okay to ask? The next day, we'll start provoking and causing trouble. That's all, we can't argue, we can't win. What's the use of you? 8 laps. Run before dinner. Damn it. I walked towards the runway with a gloomy expression on my face. Today was really tough, but the instructor shouldn't have been present at that time. Who exactly told the secret? Coach Keith. I have always had a clear and impartial approach to rewards and punishments, so both of them will be punished. Rene, who was feeling upset from the bottom of his heart, ran 2 laps and caught up with the same person who was also penalized for running laps, giving him a sense of familiarity. Seeing him also being punished, Ren felt a sense of balance in his heart. His legs were no longer sore, his waist was no longer painful, the sky was bluer, and the sunlight was less dazzling. The sunshine is not dazzling, after all, the sun has already set. Hey, did you tell me behind your back? I respect you as a man, you actually went to give a little report. Ren looked at the side and let out a sigh of frustration. What? Who went to report me? Didn't you secretly report me? Upon hearing Ren's words, it exploded. Excellent like him, how could he possibly make such a small report? It's impossible to file a complaint, it's impossible in this lifetime. I made Kirchstein, even if he fell to death, starve to death. It's impossible to make a small report. Oh, really not? Ren glanced at him sideways. Impossible, made a disdainful denial. After laughing, who is he? I can't tell, you're quite backbone. Ren thought for a moment, maybe it was Instructor Keith peeking from a distance. Secretly observing, so he ran over to punish himself and make way. Is Bald Keith feeling a bit bored? In fact, he thought too much. Coach Keith was not so idle. It was a young instructor who saw his dispute with Jean and reported the news to Keith. He only noticed that Keith was not present, but he didn't notice that the young instructor was observing not far away. So what? Let Ryan look at him and feel guilty. He won't beat him up here, will he? Just now, when Ren disagreed, he took action, which cast a shadow over him. The key was that he analyzed and realized that he might not be able to defeat the opponent. It's nothing. Ren looked at Ran and chuckled. I appreciate you very much, I apologize to you. What kind of ghost, making your face look confused? This is quite unreasonable. The guy who attacked him actually apologized to him. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Clouds of Different Colors. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Clouds of Different Colors. Just as Ren didn't know what to say, his face suddenly changed and he became serious. Do you see those guys next to us who are laughing at us? They don't even know that we're not being punished, but receiving extra training. What? Remember, if you sweat more now and bleed less in the future, men should be cruel to themselves, mocking others won't make you stronger. If this is a play, you are at least a supporting role, and they don't even have a name. Unconsciously sharp. He listened in a daze and glanced beside him, only to find a group of people watching him and Ren running away, many of whom even pointing and pointing. Young people always enjoy watching the excitement. After finishing the remaining 8 laps, it was time for dinner. Ren and Jean walked towards the cafeteria together. Perhaps it was Ryan who apologized, or maybe they both got punished and ran away together. In short, it made me feel that Ryan was not that annoying anymore and could still get along with him. Ren. If you know your mistake, just change it. Apologize. What's wrong? Do you really think the world revolves around you? He and Ran came back a bit late, and after receiving the food, they found that they couldn't find a seat to sit down for a while. Fortunately, there were still available seats on Connie's bald side, so they sat together at Connie's table. Connie took a bite of the bread and said with a smile, I heard that you were punished by Coach Keith for running circles because of a fight. How do you feel? Let's hum and say, bored. I don't know if it means Connie is bored or if it means running away is boring. Ren patted Connie's little bald head and said, I can't even stop you from eating your food. It's delicious and delicious. Connie wasn't really bald, he just shaved his hair too short, like a blue skin. When he heard this, he said displeased. Ren, do you think I'm the sweet potato girl from Sasha? I only know how to eat. Not to mention Ren's noisy dinner here. At the other table, Alan was seen with lifeless eyes and a bandage wrapped around his head in a daze, suspecting life. Amin, also known as Amin, with a different translation, looked at Alan with some concern. Today had a big impact on Alan, and after practicing balance all afternoon, he didn't see his failed son. Surrounded by the mocking voices of the crowd, after all, Alan had shouted to drive out all the giants and was somewhat of a celebrity. Most people have a bad taste for watching others joke, even though Alan and they are new recruits from the same period. Just like our friend did very poorly in the exam, and we felt sorry for him, my friend did too well in the exam, and we are not happy either. Alan's previous bold words gained a lot of attention, and many people laughed at him when they saw him fall. Sanasaki persuaded Alan to give up becoming a soldier, but Alan ignored her and left with Amin. Mikasa. I'm too difficult. Alan. Giving up is impossible, it's impossible in this lifetime. Alan and Amin did not return to the dormitory and began to seek advice from those who performed well in the balance test. The first stop was Jean and Connie, and Marco was also present. If you ask me about my skills, it's nothing, I'm a genius. Connie touched his head, feeling quite pleased, but in the end he said a few words. As for the lower bunk, the kind-hearted Marco Bot enthusiastically shared his insights and some tips. But Rant's expression was so complex that ordinary people couldn't understand it. Originally, he wanted to mock, "How did you stay calm amidst the ridicule of so many people?" But for some reason, he remembered Ren's words during the penalty run. Taunting others won't make you stronger. On the other hand, the goddess Mikasa in his heart, like a little daughter.in.law, made Alan jealous. In the end, I didn't know what was going on, but with all sorts of flavors, I unexpectedly told Alan my little trick by a stroke of luck. Alan listened attentively and was fully focused. Although what he said was not much different from what Sonriren said, he still hoped to learn more. He couldn't bear to just go back and pick up stones and grass in such a disheartened manner. Marco felt that he understood Jean very well, but now he realized that he was as smart as he could no longer understand Jean's expression, let alone his behavior. In his opinion, it would be good not to say cold words to ease the hostility towards Alan. "Mark. What happened today?" "Ryan. It's nothing, just a bowl of chicken soup. I'll just casually talk about it." He really takes it seriously. After a while, Alan left with Amin and continued to seek advice from others. What kind of tenacious willpower is it to watch Alan, who has a stubborn face, gradually drift away with a somewhat complicated expression? This is the attacking giant, even though covered in bruises, always moving towards freedom. The cruel reality repeatedly shattered his head and blood, while freedom was always so lofty. He did not hesitate, his roar could not move the enemy, his tears could not save his family and friends. He could only move forward until the end of the coordinates, the endpoint of freedom. At this moment, there was only Ren in the dormitory, and Thomas was cleaning the cafeteria. Today, he was on duty, and Ren was sitting cross-legged practicing the night breathing technique, which had become his habit. He doesn't know where his future lies, how did he cross it? If he dies again, will God still give him a hand? Alan returned very late, and he and Amin finally went to consult with Lena and Betterhold, and they got along very happily. But Ren only knew that Alan and Amin came back very late, and God knows how many people they asked. The next day, the weather was nice, with bright sunshine and no clouds for thousands of miles. Ren got up early and observed the distribution of buildings in the training corps headquarters. The open space near the steep cliffs of the valley is the training square of the training corps, with rows of strangely shaped tools arranged on one side of the training square. Across from the training square is the basic building of the training corps. From left to right, there are the training corps cafeteria, training corps dormitory, cultural classroom, corps food warehouse, corps equipment warehouse, and corps medical room. On the other side of the training square is the residence of the training instructor, and some other buildings are ignored. There seems to be some difference from the animation. After all, this is a real world, and Ryan also spent a lot of effort to recognize the main plot characters. There is still a difference between 2-dimensional paper figures and flesh and blood 3-dimensional humans. I really admire those great gods who can recognize all the plot characters at a glance when wearing them in the anime world. Ryan arched his hand. I admire it. The great gods Walker. Basic operation do not 6. Sigh. Ren stood bored in the hallway outside the cafeteria, waiting for breakfast, feeling worried. Not to mention the various fake slap scenes, he hadn't even touched the 3D maneuvering device. I woke up so early and didn't see what you were doing. A slightly sarcastic female voice sounded, and Yummer stood behind Ren to the right at some point. Next to her was Heresta. Ren glanced at Yummer and Heresta and shrugged, do you want me to do something to you? Giving Ren a white eye, Yumier was very unhappy with his way of speaking that was not worth beating. Yumier sneered, it's a miracle that you weren't killed. Ren smiled and said, isn't that right? I'm just me, the clouds of different colors. she really hit the nail on the head. He was killed by orcs in the previous world, and not dying now is just a miracle, isn't it? Ren imitated Yumi's tone and said, "Yo, Grandma, do you have any dissatisfaction with me?" Ymir took a deep breath, and before she could get angry, Harista pulled Ymir away when he saw the two of them about to fight. The number of new recruits in the training corps is currently 309. Currently, 286 of them have passed the balance adaptability test, including Alan, and 23 others have failed. If they still cannot meet the standard today, they will have to go back and pick up stones and grass. At exactly 9 o'clock in the morning, the sky was high and the clouds were light, and the sun was shining brightly. The second round of testing for unqualified new recruits began. Some people are happy while others are worried. 23 people tested one after another, some barely passed, and some left with a sense of sadness. Finally, I don't know if it was fate's arrangement, but Alan was the last one to test and caught the attention of the whole audience. Many people want to know if this guy who threatens to kill all the giants can create miracles. Alan was about to step forward when he found Ren holding on to him. Ren keenly noticed that Alan's hands were trembling, indicating how nervous he was at this moment. Alan looked at Ren in confusion, not understanding why he was blocking him. Ren handed Alan his already unloaded belt. "Use my belt." End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Good Brothers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Good Brothers, ha. Alan was a bit confused, so out of trust in Ryan, he still changed into Ryan's belt. Ryan's behavior made him vaguely aware of something. Similarly, if Amin was lost in thought, Sonri felt inexplicable. The onlookers also couldn't understand Ren's approach. Instructor Keith took a deep look at him and didn't stop Alan from changing his belt in the act. "Get ready, pull him up," Instructor Keith said in a deep voice. Alan slowly climbed up, shaking occasionally, but overall it was very stable. So easy. Alan is a bit unbelievable. Did I practice fake yesterday? How could it be? How impressive. There was almost no significant shaking. Ignoring the comments of the onlookers, Coach Keith announced, "Congratulations on passing the level." "Yeah. That's great." Alan couldn't help but shout on the balancing machine. Everyone was infected by Alan's emotions, and many people cheered for him together. Instructor Keith walked up to Ryan and deliberately asked, "What did you find?" "Alan's belt is broken." Keith took Alan's belt from Ren's hand and pretended to inspect it for a while. Turns out the buckle was loose. This kind of malfunction has never happened before. Everyone suddenly realized that Ren was speechless. In the original work, Keith could see at a glance where the belt that had never malfunctioned was damaged, which was too suspicious. The belt has never been damaged before, and Keith can easily determine which part is damaged by just a few touches. It's not suspicious. It's really a performance at the level of an actor. Ryan was so excited to hear it that he rolled his eyes. "It was you who twisted it, okay?" When he was chasing the drama, he felt like Coach Keith was the one behind it, and there was no need to say, "There is only one truth." Of course, he wasn't foolish enough to expose Instructor Keith. In the military, if instructors can avoid offending, they will not offend. That's all for this matter. After today, real training will be arranged, and a week later, the stereoscopic maneuvering device will be delivered. Coach Keith looked at the quiet crowd and sneered, "Not bad, there are only 295 people left now. I hope you can have more than 200 people when you graduate." After hearing this, everyone remained silent and practiced freely for a while before lunchtime arrived. Ran, Ellen, Mikasa, and Amin went to the cafeteria together, but on the way, Ellen hesitated to speak. "Are you asking when I found out your belt was broken?" Ren asked proactively. "Well, thank you all the same today," Alan said gratefully. "When I was guiding you yesterday afternoon, I noticed that there was an abnormal slight vibration in the suspension wire." Mr. Lay didn't blush or jump, and began to open his eyes and talk nonsense. Why didn't you say it earlier? Mikasa interjected with some anger. Alan and Amin also looked at Ren. Alan did not blame Ren, he was just a little strange why he only told him today. Ren suddenly stopped and looked at the trio. I just think Alan, you're too impulsive. It's better to endure some setbacks. It will help you grow. Actually, it's also out of a bit of bad taste. Huh. Alan was a bit confused, just because he wanted me to suffer a bit. You just laughed at me all afternoon yesterday. I see you as a comrade in arms in vain. Alan gave Ren a resentful glance and suddenly felt that this good brother seemed unreliable. Ren. Well, a good brother has to put in a lot of effort for him. Amin's mouth opened slightly, unsure of his evaluation of Ren's behavior of selling his teammates, while Mikasa gave him a fierce cut, expressing dissatisfaction with Ren's deliberate concealment. Ren patted Alan's shoulder and said earnestly, sweat more now, bleed less in the future. The difficulties and hardships before us objectively exist, but this is not a reason to back down. Those who cannot defeat us will eventually make us stronger. Another bowl of chicken soup was poured down, and despite being fooled, the trio froze and ran towards the other side. After lighting a cigarette, Instructor Keith watched as Ren and Alan walked away, with countless thoughts in his heart. Grisha, Alan's father, I have tried to stop it, but your son still became a soldier today. Keith remembered being passionate about Grisha's statement, you are special, and every time he went to investigate outside the wall, he was full of enthusiasm. He even became the commander of the investigation corps, intending to establish a human base in the giant realm outside the wall. And then he failed in a mess. Looking back, even his beloved woman Kala was snatched away by that bastard Grisha. Perhaps it was retribution, his son was even more determined to drive away giants and pursue freedom than he was. He had tried his best, but was caught by a thug. Keith felt that Alan might not be as ordinary or special as his mother Kala thought. Instructor Keith remembered his almost useless life and smiled self-deprecatingly. He was not special, he really believed in Grisha's evil at first. Ryan actually thinks he's special, especially miserable. Crossing twice in a row still looks like this embarrassing situation. After the morning test, everyone trained on adaptability for a while, and then it was lunchtime. At noon, inside the cafeteria, Ren received a piece of bread and a portion of rice soup to find a seat to sit down. Ryan, here. Thomas greeted Ryan. Ren looked at Thomas and said, oh, 3 mahjong players are missing one. Connie, let Thomas be at the same table, and even reserved a spot for him. He sat down directly, and little bald Connie asked curiously, how do you see that Alan's belt is faulty? Ren smiled and said, what do you think? Of course I'm just standing and watching. Do I have to tell you about watching anime? Connie was speechless, feeling that Ryan was being so perfunctory that he didn't want to discuss Alan's matter. He interjected, next, it's time to train the 3-dimensional maneuvering device, right? Thomas explained, our stereoscopic maneuvering device will only be delivered in a week. This week, in addition to our morning physical training, we also have a theoretical class on the stereoscopic maneuvering device in the afternoon. The use of 3-dimensional maneuvering devices is not simple, and new recruits also need to understand their structure and principles. In the afternoon, it's time to practice balance again, which will last for a week. After a week, the 3-dimensional maneuvering device will be sent over, and the training course will officially begin. The official schedule is as follows. Wake up at 6:30 a.m., wash for half an hour, run for half an hour in the morning, and have breakfast for half an hour. A cultural class from 8.00 to 9.00, 3-dimensional mobile device training from 9.00 to 11.30, and lunch at 12.00. From 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. for physical training, and from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. for stereoscopic maneuver training. Dinner at 7 o'clock, turn off the lights at 9 o'clock. Occasionally cross other courses. In the second year, I joined horse riding training and engaged in combat training with people. There is a major assessment every year, with training in the snow in the first year, marching in the forest in the second year, and practical exercises in the third year. Unconsciously, a week passed quietly, and the members of the Constitutional Army finally delivered the required three-dimensional maneuvering device. Everyone looked at the boxes of three-dimensional mobile devices piled up in front of them with fiery eyes. Ren is also a little excited. This is something that can go up to heaven. Just like taking a driver's license exam, after learning the basic theoretical knowledge, the next step is to practice in the car, and if you drive too many cars, you will naturally become an experienced driver. Classical Chinese. Husband, ride on this hood. Vernacular. I'll drive this car. The same goes for the three-dimensional maneuvering device. After completing basic balance training and learning basic knowledge in class, today we will start practical operation. Well, practical. No problem. To be honest, everyone couldn't wait anymore. Alan's eyes lit up, he flew to heaven, the boy's dream. Ryan is also looking forward to it. Everyone knows how handsome this thing is in the animation. The equipment was quickly distributed, and each person had one copy of the three-dimensional maneuvering device. After weighing it, Ren estimated that it should be less than 20 kilograms, 8.9 kilograms. This is already the result of many improvements. Before everyone could be happy for long, more than a dozen instructors wearing three-dimensional mobility devices walked over, led by Bald Keith. Are you very excited? Instructor Keith asked with a dark face. Some noisy trainees stopped talking, and Coach Keith didn't continue. He pressed the switch on the handle of the knife. Schwa. One of the fixators on one side of the three-dimensional maneuvering device flew out directly, bringing out a telescopic rope and nailing it to the trunk of a tree. Then, the sound of gas spraying sounded, and the fixator was retracted. Instructor Keith pointed to the deep hole pierced by the anchor on the tree trunk and said coldly. You see, what consequences would happen if I get stuck with this fixator. Although I've mentioned it in theory class, there are always some guys who don't take it to heart every year. Everyone looked at the holes in the tree trunk and remained silent. Some people took a breath of air, thinking that this thing was more dangerous than they thought. P.S. Thank you for the recommended ticket from the book friend, The Lost Man, end of this chapter.